Our last reading for today is Matthew chapter 4 verses 18 to 22 and is the famous one about calling people. It's entitled Jesus Calls for Fishermen. As Jesus walked along the shore of Lake Galilee, he saw two brothers who were fishermen, Simon, called Peter, and his brother Andrew, catching fish in the lake with a net. Jesus said to them, "Come with me, and I will teach you to catch people." At once they left their nets and went with him. He went on and saw two other brothers, James and John, the sons of Zebedee. They were in their boat with their father Zebedee, getting their nets ready. Jesus called them, and at once they left the boat and their father and went with him. There really is only one hymn you can have after that reading, and it is, "Will you come and follow me, if I but call your name?" The hymn was written jointly by John Bell and Graham Maule. John Bell was born in 1949 in the Scottish town of Kilmarnock in Ayrshire. After he left full-time education, he intended to be a music teacher, but then he felt the call to the ministry. He did volunteer work in a deprived neighbourhood in London for a time, and also served for 2 years as an associate pastor at the English Reformed Church in Amsterdam. He then worked for 5 years as a youth pastor for the Church of Scotland, serving a large region that included about 500 churches. He then took a similar position with the Iona community, and, with his colleague Graham Maule, began to broaden the youth ministry to focus on renewal of the church's worship. His approach soon turned to composing songs. Now, Graham Maule was born in 1958 and, having graduated in architecture from the University of Glasgow, he gave up that vocation because, in his own words, he did not want to make bread out of stone. For 7 years, he worked in voluntary and paid capacities as a youth worker, latterly for the Iona community, where he became a close colleague and collaborator of the hymn writer John Bell. Their early work, developed in the context of a monthly youth event in Glasgow, attracted up to 400 people, young people specifically. These always ended with an act of worship in which traditional music from the Southern Hemisphere and their own songs, written for specific events, enabled teenagers who had given up on the church music to find their voice and sing in 3- or 4-part harmonies without musical notation. Some of these young people became founding members of the Wild Goose Worship Group, which, for 18 years, invested time and creativity in developing materials for participative liturgy that maximise congregational song, symbolic action, and shared reflection on Scripture. In conjunction with this group and its professional offspring, the Wild Goose Resource Group, John and Graham produced more than 30 volumes of songs, biblical reflections, and associated materials for worship. Sadly, Graham died in December of last year, but his joint works with John Bell live on in song, and we will now sing one of their classic hymns, "Will you come and follow me, if I but call your name?"